right, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and get started tonight. I'd like to thank everyone for being here. This is a public meeting being conducted by the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, or TCEQ for short. For the record, this is a public meeting on an application by Pintail Landfill, LLC. It is for proposed municipal solid waste permit number 2391. As I said, this is a public meeting on that application. I have a couple of quick announcements before we get started. First of all, as you came in tonight, there were several registration tables set up. The less adorned registration table was the TCEQ table. At the TCEQ table, there were registration forms for tonight's public meeting. If you want to provide comments at tonight's public meeting, either in writing or orally, we need you to fill out one of the TCEQ registration forms. They look like this. They say TCEQ at the top. There's a place on the registration form for your name, mailing address, boxes to check if you want to be added to the mailing list, or if you want to provide comments at tonight's public meeting. And for the benefit of folks who are with us tonight, if we could have order here in the auditorium, if you want to have a conversation, please feel free to go outside and have that conversation. Thank you. The facilities, if you go back out the doors and take a right, about halfway down the hallway on your left were a men's and a ladies' restrooms. There may have also been a water fountain. And then finally, if you have a cell phone or a paging device, if you would please turn it off or put it into silent mode, I would appreciate that. My name is Brad Patterson. I work at the TCEQ in the Office of the Chief Clerk. I'm the moderator for tonight's public meeting. My role here tonight is to keep the meeting moving in an orderly fashion so that we can cover as much territory and give as many people an opportunity to speak who wish to do so in the time that we have. I'm going to go over the agenda briefly for tonight's public meeting. Up front, we'll do some introductions and you'll hear from some folks. We'll then move into the informal discussion period, which is basically a Q&A session. And then at the end of tonight's meeting, we'll hit the formal comment period, and that'll be your opportunity to submit comments on the application that you want TCEQ staff or the commissioners of the TCEQ to consider when making any final decisions on the application. Tonight's public meeting is being held at the request of Representative Cecil Bell. And tonight I am pleased to announce that we have Jessica McGee from Representative Bell's office. And at this time I'll invite Ms. McGee up. She has a statement that she would like to read on behalf of Representative Bell.
My name is Jessica McGee. Like Brad mentioned, I am Representative Bell's Chief of Staff, and this is Mira Miller. This is Representative Bell's District Director out of Magnolia. Unfortunately, Representative Bell could not be here tonight, so if you could just give me about 5 minutes, I'd like to read a prepared statement on his behalf. Thank you for coming out to tonight's public hearing. I appreciate your time and apologize I could not be there to join you. My staff is here tonight to observe and ensure this meeting proceeds accordingly to agency rules, in order to determine if Pintail's application is technically complete and meets the state's design and fiduciary requirements established for this type of project. As the applicant, Pintail has to complete the permitting process within TCEQ's guidelines for this type of application. To that end, TCEQ has to operate within the statutory framework and agency rules in answering applicant questions and evaluating the status of the submitted application, and ultimately in making a final determination on the application. Making sure that the aquifer is protected remains a priority of mine. Last session, I carried legislation to evaluate the effectiveness of landfill regulations intended to ensure that Texas's aquifers and groundwater are adequately protected against waste drainage. The rocky outcroppings which recharge the Edwards Aquifer, for example, represent the only unique permitting requirements in Texas. I continue to work to determine how to best evaluate and protect areas in Texas where vertical sand seams have a direct recharge connection with the underlying aquifer. Like you, my staff and I spent much of the last 4 years monitoring TCEQ in these proceedings, and we are committed to maintaining that effort as this new application process unfolds. We are always available to answer your questions on this or any other state issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. I would also like to recognize that Senator Colcourse is here with us tonight. Senator Colcourse asked to address the audience once we had heard from representatives of the applicant, representatives of the TCEQ. So we'll be hearing from Senator Colcourse in just a few moments. With that, I'll introduce the representatives that we have here tonight for the applicant, Pintail Landfill, LLC. We have David Green and John Riley. And at this time, I will turn the floor over to these gentlemen to explain what the application is all about.
Thank you, Brad. Hopefully you can hear me okay. My name is David Green. I'm president of Green Group Holdings. I've been involved in the waste industry for over 25 years, and I've been with Green Group Holdings since 2012. And I am now, in my role as president, also the project manager for the new application that's been filed and that we're here to discuss this evening. And first, I want to thank Representative Bell and Senator Colcourse for participating tonight and helping schedule this meeting along with the TCEQ. And I want to assure everyone that we're committed to this process. And this evening is really about you and your opportunity to express your concerns, questions, and other things that you'd like to bring either to our attention or the TCEQ. And so I want to spend most of this evening listening and reacting to what occurs. But I would like to make a couple quick points before I turn it over to our council. And that is, I want to just make sure everyone understands that this is a new application. This is not an amended application or some modification to the previous application. It is a brand new application that will go through an entire process, and this is just the start of what will be a very comprehensive review of the impacts of this project with a complete fresh look. And with that in mind, our company decided to do the same thing. We have put together an entirely new internal team at my direction and leadership from the group that you may have worked with before from Green Group Holdings and Pintail Landfill. And we've also engaged new professionals, experts, and other consultants to work with us to do a real kind of zero-based reassessment of this project based on the issues that were raised in the prior application, but also to take a look at this facility before we move forward with this application and as we go through the process. And so with that new team, we also came to the conclusion that we believe that this facility can be permitted in compliance with the TCEQ rules. And that's our goal and objective as we go through this process. We also have a couple other things that have happened since the last application was filed and reviewed. Many of you know that we did not own the property when the prior application was submitted. We had an option on the land. That option expired last year, and we decided to exercise the option, and we now own the property in fee simple title. And I think that's a different level of commitment than what some of you might have thought before. And I wanted to point that out to you. Lastly, and then I'll turn it over to John, is that this, like I said, is just the start of a lengthy process. So far, we have filed parts 1 and 2 of the application. There are 2 more parts that will be filed, parts 3 and 4, and that's where the real detailed engineering and construction and design criteria will be included. So we don't have that level of specificity that's been included in the application at this point, but it is coming. Look forward to this evening and an opportunity to listen to you further. Thank you. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to John Riley, our outside counsel.
Good evening. My name is John Riley, and I'm with the law firm of Jackson, Gilmore & Dobbs, and as you just heard from David, I represent Green Group Holdings, or Pintail, LLC, in this processing of this application. Although we only have a few minutes here at the beginning to address you, one of the issues that I'm confident will come up this evening has to do with the City of Hempstead adopting an ordinance that, on its surface, seeks to prohibit the siting of a landfill in Hempstead and, frankly, beyond. I'll take just a minute to stand up for a second. I want to just change the exhibit over here. So what you're seeing, and I'm sure most of you, many of you in the back can't see what what's on the easel over here, but it is a depiction of what we think the City of Hempstead ordinance states or prohibits. And you can see, even way in the back, I'm sure you can see a big black circular blobby kind of area, and that is that's indicative of the area that the City of Hempstead's ordinance seeks to prohibit the siting of landfill. Now, clearly, the city has the authority by statute in the Solid Waste Disposal Act of Texas to prohibit the siting of municipal solid waste and other waste disposal facilities. What it doesn't have is the ability or authority to prohibit every location in its jurisdiction and ETJ, or extraterritorial jurisdiction, as it's more formally known. The point being that the reason we determined, or a reason, I should say the reason, because there are other arguments that we will likely advance as time goes on, but the fundamental argument or fundamental legal point is that the city's ordinance goes too far. It essentially creates a ban on landfills and waste disposal facilities in the city and its ETJ, and that is not within the city's authority to pass or to adopt. And again, the statute is quite clear that a municipality may pass such an ordinance, but in addition to prohibiting locations, it must also provide for locations within the same jurisdictional area. Again, I don't mean to get too much into the legal arguments, but I wanted to put that out up front so that you can understand at least fundamentally why we think that the City of Ordinance does not preclude this project from going forward. Thank you. I look forward to answering your questions if I can.
All right, so at this time, I'll introduce the folks that are here from TCEQ. There's quite a few of us, so please bear with me. I do notice that there's some folks standing in the back. Obviously, there are plenty of seats, so please feel free to come on down and take a seat as we're going through these introductions. Again, my name is Brad Patterson. I work at the TCEQ in the Office of the Chief Clerk. I'm the moderator of tonight's meeting. Also from the Office of the Chief Clerk is Jim Fernandez. Jim is over here to my right. He's operating the sound and recording equipment. We are making a recording of the entire meeting. That's why it'll be important for anyone who does speak tonight to speak into a microphone. We have a public microphone set up down here to my left for you guys to use. That's so that everyone can hear you, but it's also how we get you on the recording that we're making. That'll be in the agency file after tonight's meeting. Out at our registration tables, Deanna Avalos and Irma Salazar are helping you get registered. From the Environmental Law Division, Anthony Tatu is here tonight representing the Executive Director. Earl Lott is the Director of the Waste Permits Division. Also from the Waste Permits Division is Chance Gooden, Galia Key, Mickey Kellerescu. These folks are sitting down in the audience to my left, and Arden Avakian. From the Office of Public Interest Counsel, Garrett Arthur is down there on the end. Andrew Keese is here from Agency Communications. And then from our regional office in Houston, Carlos Romo is, okay, over there to my left. The regional office is where our environmental investigators work out of. If you ever had any concerns about any facility that TCEQ regulates in your area, they would be the ones that you would contact. They would conduct the environmental investigation and report back to you. So at this time, I'll turn the floor over to TCEQ staff, and I'll ask Chance to talk about the technical review process or where we are in that process. Go ahead, Chance.
Thank you. Good evening. I would like to present a brief overview of the application review process at the TCEQ. When an application was received, in this case was July 5th, it first goes through administrative review. This review was completed on July 19th, with the exception of the land use compatibility, which is currently under technical review. The technical review begins following this administrative review, and it is currently ongoing. The application contents are being reviewed by a technical review team, and that includes Mickey Kilarkescu, she's a project engineer, and Arden Avakian is the professional geologist. This technical review team are reviewing the application contents for compliance with applicable rules, including the review of whether any local ordinance or order prohibits the processing or disposal of municipal solid waste in the area of the proposed landfill.
And then if you'll pass the microphone down to Anthony. Anthony's going to talk about the administrative process for this application.
Thanks, Brad. Again, Anthony Tatsu, I'm an attorney with the TCEQ, and some of you may recognize me. I think this is my 4th public meeting here in Hempstead, counting the public meeting we had for the transfer station. Typically, when I'm given the mic at this point, I walk you through where we are in the process and where we go from here. But I think what I want to do is, since Mr. Riley already raised the issue of the local ordinances, and because I know there are a lot of concerns about TCEQ's position on local ordinances, I just want to talk a little bit about that instead. As you know, there was a previous application filed by Pintail, which was returned in October of 2015. And so we have a new application that was filed in June of this year. And when the applicant filed, when the application came in, the application indicated that there were no local ordinances which prohibited the processing or disposal of municipal solid waste at the proposed site. Of course, in a sense, we've all been involved in this for quite a while. The executive director is aware that there are local ordinances that have been passed by both the city and the county. And at that time, the decision was made by the executive director that we would make a determination about the local ordinances as we were doing the technical review. And I know there's some concern and perhaps a perception that by doing the technical review, the TCEQ made a determination that the ordinances don't apply or that the ordinances are invalid. And I guess I just wanted to clarify at this time that that's not the case, that we are still looking at that issue as part of the technical review. Both sides, for the applicant and then representatives for the protestants, have had the opportunity to speak to the executive director, and they have also filed written briefs and comments for the executive director to consider. And I just want to be completely honest with you, this is really a new situation for the TCEQ, and we're proceeding with this very carefully because, I mean, the fact is that whatever decision the executive director makes on this issue, we're going to be facing litigation in all likelihood. So because of that, we're looking at this issue from all angles, and we're looking at it very carefully. And really, I do understand that probably a lot of you are, and as I said, I read all the comments that come in, and I do understand that a lot of you are probably wondering, including the applicant, is probably wondering why this is taking so long. And again, I would just like to reiterate that it's something that is being looked at very carefully by the actual executive director. So if you have any questions about the process, kind of where we would go from here, rather than take time to do that now, just feel free to come talk to me at the break or after the meeting. I'd be happy to walk through that. But I wanted to go ahead and address that ordinance issue up front. Thanks.
Okay, and then Anthony, if you'll pass the microphone down to Garrett. Garrett Arthur from the Office of Public Interest Counsel will talk about his office's role. Garrett will be the last person that you'll hear from, the TCEQ, and then after Garrett speaks, I'll be inviting Senator Kolkhorst to come up and address. So go ahead, Garrett.
Good evening, y'all. I'm Garrett Arthur from the Office of Public Interest Counsel. I'm an attorney in that office. My role in that office is to represent the public interest. While I can't represent individual members of the public, I can be a resource to you to help you understand your legal rights and responsibilities in TCEQ processes. And regarding the local ordinances issue, I'll just go ahead and tell y'all, my position is different from the ED staff and the applicant. It's our position that the proposed location is prohibited by the local ordinances, and given the opportunity,
All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Go ahead, Garrett.
and given the opportunity, I'll be making that recommendation to the 3 TCEQ commissioners. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you. Senator Colhorst, I'll be happy to invite you up. We appreciate Senator Colhorst for being here with us tonight.
Thank you so much. First of all, I want to thank Hempstead High School and Hempstead ISD for hosting us tonight in this public forum. And I also want to read formally a letter and then make a couple of remarks afterwards. So I penned this letter, which is dated today. I am writing on behalf of the citizens of Waller County to express my opposition to Pintail Landfill LLC's application to establish a solid waste facility, proposed permit number 2391. Over 5 years ago, Pintail first attempted to obtain authorization for this project, and in 2015, TCEQ returned Pintail's application in order to protect the integrity of the municipal solid waste program. At that time, I actively opposed the project, first as a member of the House of Representatives and then ultimately in the Texas Senate. Evidently, neither TCEQ's original denial nor immense community opposition has sufficiently deterred the applicant from again attempting to construct this facility. Since the original application, local ordinances have been adopted to deter the construction of a solid waste facility in Waller County. While the applicant now claims the ordinances are unlawful, I believe no powers delegated to the TCEQ by the Texas legislature in the matter of solid waste regulation and permitting enable the TCEQ to determine the validity of these ordinances. It is my belief that the TCEQ should deny the new application. The good people of Waller County have dealt with the threat of this facility for over 5 years. They should be commended for their efforts, because if not for the vigilance of the concerned citizens of Waller County, our state would today be living with a dangerously flawed landfill that would have failed TCEQ requirements. This issue was settled when the TCEQ returned the original application. That decision should preclude what is now a thinly veiled rehash of the matter. State agencies must never reward bad behavior, and therefore I ask the Commission to issue another and final denial. Sincerely, Lois W. Colhorst, Senator, Senate District 18. So let me speak just for a moment, and I want to welcome y'all to my district again and again and again. I think it was very poignant that this is the fourth public meeting. I have watched, first not as your state representative, but from a neighboring county of Washington County and 6 other counties that I represented as a House member in the Texas legislature, and then had the blessing and honor of being elected to the Senate in Senate District 18 and becoming the representative in the Senate for these fine people in this room. I have been inspired and awed by your passion and your tenacity. And when I say that, from the bottom of my heart, to know that you have garage sales, that you, the people, have raised enough money to cobble together the effort to then look at the science of why the landfill should not go on this particular site. My mother was born and raised in Waller County, right here in Hempstead, Texas. I can take you to the house that I went to as a child. Hempstead is a proud place, and it is our place. And let me say that there are places in Waller County that maybe a landfill is appropriate, but not where the recharge of an aquifer potentially is. I would say to Pintail, your anger, angst, and maybe reflection should look at your consultant team where there was faulty information. I'm a business owner. Man, Jimmy and I have had our ups and downs, and we've had our stores that we just had to shutter and say we need to move on. You've bought a beautiful piece of acreage. And there's other things that that land could serve, but not a landfill. And I love that emotion and passion. And so tonight is not against Pintail. It's not against the fact that we must have solid waste disposal sites in Texas, a state that is growing. It is that this one is placed in an area that God didn't mean for us to put garbage and waste into the ground. Because like many of the old timers told me, from the drought of 2011 on, when it started raining again, we saw the water levels rise. We did indeed. But let me go to where I think as a lawmaker, I really struggle with the agency, an executive agency, an agency appointed by the governor of the state of Texas, which is duly founded in our Constitution and in our statutes. What they are contemplating, and I want to compliment them, is the very, very difficult task at this moment, because Pintail is saying the ordinance is not valid, and TCEQ must make a very important decision that will impact the entire state of Texas. Yes, they will file. There will be lawsuits that were probably filed by the Pintail group that says, yeah, you do have that power. But me as a state lawmaker, I believe in my heart that the TCEQ is not the judiciary. Let this be fought out in the court. Let this go before judges. Like our Constitution says, the separation of the three branches. Let this go before the judicial branch to then say to the city of Hempstead and the people of Waller County, you have an invalid, or maybe you do not. You have a very valid ordinance. That is where this should be played out. Finally, I just want to say that my husband said it best when I jumped in the car to speed here, and my chief of staff was with me tonight. I have two staffers here, Larissa Plunto, who covers Waller County for me, and also Chris Steinbach, who is the chief of staff. Spending most of his time in Austin, and that's how important tonight is, that I brought a staffer from Austin. Jimmy Colgore said it best to me when he looked at Chris and he said, I thought that was over. Like, I thought that was done. There was not going to be a landfill there. So we find ourselves again at another public hearing. And I do say with all due respect that to begin the process, y'all thought you had a good piece of property. It ended up that it wasn't. Thank goodness the TCEQ returned for the first time in I don't know how long an application because of faulty information and that it was not done properly. I do wish that your prudent judgment would have shown that maybe we should do it somewhere else. But as we move forward, this is the one thing that I want to say, and we see this playing out in the presidential election and everything that's going on. We are still a country of the people, by the people, and for the people. And so tonight I say to each of you, thank you for being here. Thank you for caring about your community. Thank you for your efforts of raising money and trying to have your voices heard. It shouldn't be this hard. So with your help in the next legislative session, we'll go to work on making this a little bit easier and making sure that the process is fair for the people. So with that, I say thank you for allowing me to be here tonight to express my opinion as a citizen, and certainly my heartfelt conviction as the state senator from Waller County. Thank you.
All right, thanks again, Senator. Again, I noticed that there are quite a few folks who are standing in the back. I would invite you to feel free to come on down and find a seat. There's quite a few seats that are still available. At this time, I'm going to talk about the format for the rest of tonight's public meeting. The next part of the public meeting is going to be the informal discussion period. This is basically a question and answer period. It's an opportunity for members of the public to come on up to the microphone and ask questions related to the waste application. And we have representatives of the applicant, TCEQ staff, who will try and answer your question tonight. Again, we're looking for questions on the application. A fair number of you, at last count about 25 or so, had signed up to submit comments at tonight's public meeting. Please hold your comments for the last part of the meeting, which is the formal comment period. We'll do the comment period at the end of tonight's meeting. As I'm eyeballing it, there's about 200 or so folks in the room tonight. As I mentioned, there were 25 of you who signed up to speak. There may be more than that by the time we get to the formal comment period. So I do want to make sure that we leave time at the end of tonight's meeting for everyone who wants to give comments to do so. So for that reason, I'm going to go ahead and let you know that the question and answer period will probably be about 45 minutes. We'll need to wrap it up at that point so we can then start taking comments from people. So here during the informal discussion period, please limit yourself to questions that you have on the application. As a reminder, tonight is not a contested proceeding. I am not a judge. No decisions about the application are going to be made at tonight's public meeting. The purpose of the Q&A session is to exchange information. We're looking for questions that you have related to the application. I'm not going to call on you at this point. If you know you have a question, and I would encourage you, if you know you have a question that you want to hear an answer to tonight, come on up to the microphone. You guys can form a line up the aisle, and we'll take your questions. As a reminder, we are very early in the process. Tonight will not be your only opportunity to ask questions. You can call us at the agency Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, and ask us questions about the application. That would be fine. Tonight will also not be your only opportunity to submit comments on the application. You can continue to submit comments on the application even after tonight's public meeting, and I imagine the comment period on this application will be open for quite some time. So I just want to make sure that no one leaves tonight thinking, oh, I didn't have a chance to talk, or I didn't have a chance to submit a comment. There will be ample opportunity to do so. I will ask that you go one question at a time. I find that it's easier for us to answer each question you have if we just go one question at a time. I think it's also easier for folks to hear the answers and understand them. After you've asked a couple of questions, I'll probably ask you to take a break and let someone else come up and ask questions. When you're getting a response from either TCEQ or the applicant, please let them complete their response. Don't interrupt them. There might be somebody in the audience that wants to hear the complete answer. And let's only have one person speaking at a time so that everyone can hear. And also we can pick you up clearly on the recording that we're making. And again, since we are having an exchange of information, I would ask that we keep the tone conversational throughout the meeting. With that, I've got it's right at 7:45, so we'll be wrapping up the Q&A by 8:30. I just want to get that out there. So let's go ahead and get started. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. First, I'd like to thank Senator Koppel for her, can y'all hear me? I'd like to thank Senator Koppel for her comments. I think they were absolutely spot on and express the concerns the majority of us have. I'm June Jackson. I'm judge of the local county court of law, so judicial ethics prohibit me from expressing an opinion regarding the issue of ruling on this landfill, but I can ask some questions. And one of the gentlemen up here from TCEQ said that in this process, they're looking at whether or not there are ordinances. Yes, there are ordinances. So I don't understand and would like to know from you at TCEQ why you think it's your position to rule on the validity of any of those. I know they're obviously going to take the position that they're invalid, and that should be something left for a court somewhere to decide. But why does TCEQ think that they have the authority? Where are y'all getting the authority to make a decision about that? And I understand the issue of excluding everything's not permissible, but we can't forget that there's also a county ordinance, and part of the footprint of this landfill is in that county, it's not within the city ETJ. And the county did in fact not exclude it from the entire county. It just excluded it from a portion of the county. So even if a court were to decide, and I do believe it's a court's position, it's a court place to make that decision, that the city ordinance isn't valid, there's still a county ordinance. But my question for y'all is twofold. One, why do y'all think you have the authority to rule on whether it's valid or not? And two, how many times do they get to keep resubmitting applications?
Okay, so let's go ahead and address the first question. Anthony, is there anything that you can elaborate as far as the ordinance and TCEQ's authority here?
Well, I guess I just answered this way. You know, we are an administrative agency and we are subject to our rules and also to applicable statutes. And in this case, there is an applicable statute in the Health and Safety Code, which can be read a number of different ways. And the applicant interprets it one way, protestants interpret it another way.
What statute is that?
Well, Health and Safety Code 363-112. And this statute talks about the authority of a municipality or county to prohibit waste. There's also a section in here that says the TCEQ cannot issue a permit if a county or city has passed an ordinance unless that ordinance is invalid. So the issue is really, okay, does TCEQ make that determination whether the ordinance is invalid? And I understand that protestants, everyone's position is, no, that's a decision for the court. The applicant is arguing the other side. They're saying, you've been given explicit authority by the Texas Health and Safety Code to make that determination. And that's the issue that...
TCEQ ever ruled on this?
Hold on.
Have y'all ever ruled on this before, on a permit where there was an ordinance, or is this a new?
Yeah, actually not. You know, I mean, we have cases where there's an existing ordinance and an application comes in and it's pretty cut and dry. So this one's a little different because we had an application come in, then an ordinance was passed, then the application was returned, and then another application came in. So, you know, what I said in my opening remarks is that it is a new situation for us and we're taking a very careful look at it. So, you know, that's my answer for you, is that we're trying to interpret the Health and Safety Code and looking at all the arguments that are submitted by both sides at this time.
May I clarify one point, just because it was raised?
John, hold that real close, please.
Sorry, the landfill footprint is actually entirely within the extraterritorial jurisdiction, of the city of Hempstead. There's no part of the landfill footprint that's in the county right now. Just so you're aware. I know you said that earlier, but I wanted to clarify that.
I'm sorry, I didn't get the second part of your question. Can you repeat the second part, please?
The second part of her question is...
How many times do they get to resubmit? I mean, you heard people tonight, everybody thought this was done and over, and do they just get to continuously submit ordinances until they've driven us all into the poorhouse with this fight? I mean, this hasn't been easy. These people, they talk about they're committed because they bought some property here. How many people here are committed to fight this landfill? Resubmitting forever. I mean, y'all ruled once, y'all sent it back to them.
All right, so let's go ahead and try to address that. Is there anything...
Thank y'all very much, and I'm sorry about it.
No, thank you.
So yeah, I'll definitely give that a shot as well. And I think what you'll hear me say more than once tonight is that, you know, as an administrative agency, we have to follow our rules and our laws. And really, we don't have the authority to stop someone from filing another application, you know, unless it's exactly the same application. There are no statutes or regulations which give us that authority at this time.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Blair Pena, and I have a question for Pintail. In this second application, why did Pintail decide to go deeper and higher?
Thank you for the question. I just want to start out, since this is the first time I've spoken since Senator Colcourse spoke, I just want to tell you I respect what you had to say, and I was listening, and thank you for your participation. When we decided to resubmit the application, we decided to look at normal design criteria as approved and permissible under the TCEQ rules. And it's very common, based on our understanding of coastal conditions in this part of the state, that landfills liner system do come in contact with the groundwater. And so as we looked at redesigning the site and decided to make contact with the groundwater, we went ahead and excavated to a depth that we thought would work for us operationally, knowing though that we still have not done the detailed construction design work that will be in the subsequent parts of the application. As it relates to the height, these facilities are built with side slopes that have a certain contour to them. And stability analysis is done to determine how safe they can be as they are built to a certain height. When this first application was submitted, even though this facility can be safely designed to be much taller than what was originally agreed to in the first permit, there was an agreement made with the county that the landfill would not be more than 150 feet high. That agreement no longer exists. So when we went in to redesign the site, we did it based on normal design criteria based on the side slopes.
This question's for the TCEQ. Has the TCEQ determined whether the Pintail facility is less than 5,280 feet from a residence or a private or public water well?
Thank you. Hold on a second.
I think if your question is, does the city ordinance prohibit the siting of a landfill if it was valid, then I think the question, the answer
Hold on,
is
let him
yes.
finish, and if she wants to follow up, she can.
The answer is yes.
Okay, that was my question, because the City of Hempstead ordinance, it's a siting ordinance, and it says landfills are okay as long as they're 5,280 feet away from residences and public and private water wells.
Now, I don't think there's any debate from any of the sides who are working on this landfill that that's the case.
And so if we put Pintail's legal arguments aside, does the TCEQ agree that the Pintail site would be barred by the local ordinances?
If the city ordinance is valid, yes.
Okay, and when you're looking at the ordinance, does the TCEQ agree that their expertise is really related to environmental issues, technical issues, engineering issues, that kind of, those kind of topics when it comes to looking at this permit application?
Our expertise, yeah, I think that's a fair statement.
Okay.
All right, and so you've asked several questions already. Do you mind if we go ahead and give someone else a chance? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Howard Schultz.
Order. Thank you.
My name's Howard Schultz. I live in Washington County, and I'm very concerned about this situation. To TCEQ, my question is, lately we've been having heavy rains. 21 inches of rain in this area. Louisiana had 2 feet of rain in areas that's never flooded before. My concern is, in building this landfill, in the construction of it, what would happen if we would have this kind of rainfall that would flood over this landfill? And another thing, we talk about groundwater, yes, but there's environmental issues other than groundwater. And I just want to say that I hope y'all consider rainfall. And I want to say this, you gentlemen, since the last 5 years, a phrase has come up that lives matter. These lives matter. Now, these lives matter. You feel that lives matter I don't think in your business lives matter. You want to mention Pintail LLC. LLC, Limited Liability Corporation. Let's say something happens that our groundwater has a problem, or something happens. You get a call. You talk amongst your folks. And you as attorney say, hey, it's LLC. That's all we're responsible for the assets of the Pintail. Who pays for it after your assets of Pintail is gone? It's easy to get off your back by saying LLC. But who pays for it? The state? We pay for it?
Again, let's have one person speaking at a time, please.
The taxpayers pay for it.
Answer the question.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
who pays for it after your LLC? Limited, and folks, limited. Who would pay the bill if there's a fault in the system?
okay,
So your question assumes that something's going to be harmed.
hold on.
The question assumes that someone's going to be harmed or the environment's going to be harmed. Is that right?
I said, who pays
Do you know
for it?
how many municipal solid waste landfills there are in Texas?
Sir, you're not answering the question.
No, I am answering your question.
Hold on.
Who pays for it? Who pays for it? After your limited liability, sir, you throw up your hands and go play golf. And you know what your own...
That's not a question.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's please have some order, and let's please stick to questions related to the
Okay, he's not
application.
answering the question.
Hold on, please let me finish. This gentleman's made a number of statements that are more appropriately made during the comment period, so that they'll be on the record. I would invite you to come back up during the comment period to make those statements again. Please simply state what is your question that you want the Pintail representatives to ask.
Mr.
Answer.
Attorney, LLC means limited liability on the Pintail asset. You have a problem that was not anticipated. Our groundwater has a problem. Y'all just raise up your hands and say, hey, limited liability. Let's go play golf.
No, your premise is incorrect. That's not
Okay,
All right.
all right.
One other, now I just want to mention.
Do you have another question related to the application?
Yes.
Okay.
To y'all, to all.
Sir, do you mind speaking into the microphone so we can hear you?
To y'all, in the last 5 years of saying this come up, lives matter. Do these people's lives matter to you? These people's lives matter to you? And I'm going to say one thing. We approach. Yes.
Sir, we'll need you to speak from the microphone so we can hear you.
Hey, here's my hat. Throw in the hat and get the heck out of here.
All right. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen. All right, folks, as a reminder, we do have a limited amount of time for this discussion period tonight. I would encourage us to stay on topic and to... thank you. And let's have questions related to the application. Later on tonight, you'll have an opportunity to come up and comment on the application. During the comment period, you can make whatever comments you want related to the application. Let's please try and stay on topic. And, sir, be sure to collect your hat before you leave tonight. Yes, sir, go ahead.
Hello, my name is George Mitchell, and I've been in the solid waste industry for 35 years, and I've dedicated my life to creating a waste-free world. Let me point out to you one really important thing, and I think it's evident by all the people that are here. You know, there's kind of a saying in Texas where if you're not welcome, don't come. And I think these people have shown you all of you, for the last 5 years, they don't want your landfill. Let me tell you why they don't want your landfill. Because this thing is built near an aquifer. And the landfill liner systems are only guaranteed for 20 years. So when you put waste into a landfill, it decomposes. It creates leachate, which is a bacteria-laden water, that when it gets into the water supply or the aquifers, it pollutes everything. And this toxic waste can kill people. This is why they don't want that, because the landfill is going to be there for more than 20 years, then what when the liner breaks? Which is exactly his question about who's going to pay for the liability, who's going to pay for the lives that are lost, who's going to pay for the birth effects. The other question he asked you was about...
Can we address that? I know, can we go ahead and address that question?
Sure,
and then
go
we'll
ahead
go on
and
to the
address
next
that
question. So I guess the question is related to liability.
Sir, did I hear you correctly that you've been in the solid waste industry for how many years?
35.
35 years. In what capacity?
I've been an entrepreneur designing and building all sorts of different types of integrated recycling systems.
So then you probably know that the liner system must be intact for the entire life of the landfill plus 30 years. You probably realize that, right?
I realize
So
that.
your
But they're only guaranteed for 20
your
years.
your statement about the liner system only being watched or monitored
Not
for 20
watched,
years.
guaranteed
Hold
by
on.
the manufacturer.
Please let him finish, and then you can ask a follow-up
Well,
question.
he's not answering the question correctly.
Thank you.
Sir, the answer is
You're an attorney, right? So what do you know about it?
Okay, folks. All right, listen.
I'm not here to argue with you, sir.
Yes, can I
You
please
have no point. You have no argument.
Ladies and gentlemen, please.
Question number 2.
Okay,
This gentleman-
hold on.
Excuse
I have
me.
the floor. The purpose of this informal discussion period is to ask questions related to the application. We'll give you answers tonight. I understand that you may not like the answers, or that you may not agree with the answers, and that's what the comment period is for tonight at the end of the meeting, to come up and on the record state, you said this during the Q&A, I didn't agree with that, and here's why. That's the perfect time to do that. At this point, I'm not hearing a lot of questions on the application, and I got some folks who are standing in line behind you. I just want to make sure that we're asking questions at this point. We'll try and give you an answer, and then we'll move on to the next question.
This all has to do with the application because it has to do with people's lives that live around the landfill.
Okay, so what's your next question,
The
please?
next question is,
Hey,
what
Brad,
do you do
Brad.
to contain the
Yes,
stormwater?
hold on. He's speaking.
I wanted to try
No.
to, I
Hold
wanted,
on, Mr. Green. We'll go ahead and let him ask this question.
I was
The
trying-
next question I have is what precautions have you taken to protect the surrounding environment from the runoff from rainwater during these torrential rains as the material on the top of the landfill gets washed off the side into the soil outside of the landfill?
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to try to answer both of the questions that you raised. One was who pays for a situation where there may be contamination resulting from the landfill operations. Was that one of your questions?
No, that was not my question. My
Okay.
question was,
I'll-
since the liners are only guaranteed by the manufacturers, the geotech liners are only guaranteed for 20 years, how do we know that they're going to last longer than that? Then what happens?
Well, I think those questions are related, but first of all, under the requirements that we live by, we have to guarantee that the liner system does not fail during the entire life of the site, plus 30 years thereafter, and we have to put up what's called financial assurance so that funds are in place in case something happens so the taxpayers don't have to pay for it. That has to be calculated every year, and evidence has to be given to the TCEQ every year. So that there are methods in place to protect a community if something.
Hold on.
And then, so the liner system must last for the entire length of the term of the life of the site and another 30 years thereafter with financial assurances in place.
It must last. What if it doesn't? If it's only guaranteed by the manufacturers to last 20 years, it's guaranteed for 20 years.
That's not my understanding.
Well, you're incorrect.
Okay.
The other problem with all this is the landfill will also spew methane, which all these people that live here have to breathe. And the net effect of all this, which is why they don't want you here, is because in the long run, it decreases the property value of the places they've owned for their entire lifetimes.
Okay, thank you. And again, I would invite you to come back up during the comment period and make some of those same statements again so that they're on the record. Yes, sir.
My name is Bob Gage. I have to hunker down to this thing, I guess. I guess I'm going to have to come back during the formal session because I was going to give you a synopsis statement on some things, but I do have some more direct questions. I learned 5 years ago not to ask questions, not to offer comments about technical details of the landfill application, because just like TCEQ going through goodness knows how many iterations of an application and correcting what the applicant has supplied once, twice, 6, 7, or 8 times, they take advantage of us too when we point something out. So I'm kind of determined to try real hard not to help them write the application this time. But
Thank you.
Mr. Green, a question for you. I tried to hunt you up. You just sort of appeared out of nowhere recently. I tried to hunt you up on the internet. I'm not a real good search engine person, but I found jillions of David Greens, nary one that I could see in the waste business. Where'd you come from before 2012, please? A little autobiography of your business career. Who'd you work for and what did you do?
Sure. I graduated from law school in 1984 from Florida State University, and I studied environmental and land use law. I practiced law for 7 years in Florida, and I'm still a member of the Florida Bar. In 1990, I accepted a job as Region General Counsel for Waste Management's operations in Florida, and I had a 20-year career, give or take, with Waste Management in various capacities, both in the legal department and then in operations and in management. Took early retirement in 2012 and then started with Green Group Holdings thereafter. And I'm glad you didn't find anything on the internet about me that might have been embarrassing or incriminating.
Well, I used to have to work with lawyers myself, so I can appreciate you might like to lie low at that. Mr. Riley, and I don't mean that in a particularly bad way. Mr. Riley, you're a high-powered lawyer. You said something that I believe is not correct a while ago. You did say that Pintail bought the property from, you didn't name them, but it's Marengo Family Properties. You said that you bought it in fee simple. I believe that would be incorrect.
That was Mr. Green. So I guess that's correct, but I'll let Mr. Green answer since he's the one who said the statement about fee simple.
Very well.
Is there a question or was that a comment?
Well, I wanted to correct the fee simple. You didn't get any minerals.
We did. You're right. We did not get the minerals.
Okay, Mr. Tatu. A couple of years ago, you signed the executive director's response to comments on the previous application, number 2377. And not the executive director, not the head of the law department. It got all the way down to you. Did you write, or can you tell us who wrote that response to comments?
The response to comments? Sure. Well, I wrote it along with the attorney who was working with me at that time, Dan Ingersoll, but most of the technical issues are actually addressed by the MSW staff. And again, that was working a lot with Hunt, if you recall. He previously worked on the application. He's since retired. So probably the three of us were the...
excuse me. Did you say, Hunt from Punta
Exactly.
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
Yes. So the three of us were the people who did most of the work, and then it was probably edited by some other folks. But probably myself, Daniel, and Hunt worked on it the most.
Okay, thank you. So you had to correct Mr. Punta because at one point, when the former second notice of deficiency was written, I believe Mr. Punta was signing that letter, and the last line in it was, they better get it right this time because there would be no third notice of deficiency. I suppose he probably got his hand slapped since in the executive director's response, whoever wrote that section made very, very clear that there is no limit to the number of notices of deficiency that you guys give to them when their application does not meet the requirements of TCEQ. Which set of rules are we playing by this go-round? Infinite notices of deficiency, or two, or what?
Well, I think that the answer to the question is there is not a limit on the numbers of notices of deficiencies. So the fact that we had quite a few notices of deficiencies in the previous application indicates that Hunt spent a lot of time going over that application. Ultimately, we reached a point where the applicant said, our application doesn't meet the rule requirements. And it was at that point that Mr. Lott sent a letter saying your application is returned. So I can tell you there's no specific number of notice of deficiencies, but obviously sometimes there comes a point where the application has to be returned.
All right, thank you, sir. You've asked a handful of questions at this point. We've got several people who are standing in line behind you. Do you mind?
Quick one.
A quick one, please.
Green Group, in your option to purchase, the sellers were to get a, quote, royalty, unquote, from future garbage that was disposed of. Is that still part of your deed obligations to them?
That's my understanding, yes.
All right, thank you. Yes.
Hello, my name is Shanae Thomas. I'm a second-year psychology major here at Prairie View A&M University. And I want to kind of ask you a rhetorical question before I begin to formulate my original question, and it's for the TCEQ. What exactly, what is your job? What are you here for? What are you supposed to do? Is it the health and safety codes? Can you reiterate that for the public?
My name is Earl Lott. I'm the director of the Waste Permits Division, and we're responsible for the review and oversight of waste management activities in the state of Texas. And we look at applications to ensure that they are protective of human health and the environment.
Great. Now, with that being said, because you're about to help me prove my point. What do you plan to do about the desolation of the economic prosperity of this area? Not only just Hempstead, but it's going to be Waller and Prairie View too. The desolation of the economic prosperity and the physiological prosperity. Because from my understanding is, your landfill is going to run into our groundwater, correct? And there's only so many years that we have of reassurance. So with the student life and also citizens' lives, what do you plan to do to ensure that we're going to be safe? Because it doesn't really look like they care about our air quality, water quality, or the fact that their landfill is going to be seen from our stadium, which not only will be disgustingly stinky, but I don't know if you guys know this, but Prairie View is the economic drive for this entire, for Hempstead. Because our citizens go and buy their products. We go and put money in their pockets and make sure that they're employed because they're using our money. So if there's a landfill here, people won't really want to go to Prairie View, will they? What will that do to the economic prosperity of the citizens here, let alone their health? Because from my understanding, there's going to be neurotoxins and all types of dirty crap in these waters that we're going to be expected to drink and bathe in. Now, you don't have to worry about a landfill in your neighborhood, do you? So originally my question is, to reiterate, what are you going to do about the harmful neurotoxins that are going to be in our water, the toxins that are going to be in our soil, because we have farmers here who cultivate crops and they have cattle. And what are you going to do about the air quality once your landfill is built?
So
That's really not
a broad-based question. Is there something that you guys want to say about that?
Well, since you started with the other side of the room, but you may be directing that at us. The answer to your question is the liner system for the landfill will prohibit or prevent any contaminants from getting into the ground where you're concerned with. Let me finish if I may. Secondly, the groundwater is monitored to make sure that happens. So there's a monitor well network that every landfill, modern landfill requires.
For only 50 years though, because it's 20,
So let me
30 years,
hold on.
right? What after the 50 years?
Please let him finish, and then we'll move on to the
I'll
next
ask that question again.
In terms of air contamination, yes, waste degrades, and there are emissions from the degradation of waste. But that occurs, as you might expect, in where your trash goes today. So there is an air quality issue. We will meet the requirements of the TCEQ to minimize those emissions, but there are emissions.
Do you know how we can minimize it? By not having the landfill in the first place.
All right, thank you. And And certainly I would encourage you to come up here in the comment period and make those as part of your comments.
He wasn't
for the
answering
record.
my questions properly,
Okay.
so I felt like I needed to intervene.
All right, thank
So
you.
would you continue to answer what you're going to do about the water now? Because you got the air. And keep in mind that there's still a soil problem. So answer those two questions for me and I'll leave you alone, sir.
The waste will be contained in the landfill, and it is illegal for it to be discharged from the landfill, and there's a liner system to make sure that happens.
How long will it last again?
As I mentioned earlier,
I'm 19 years old.
Hold
Am I
on.
going to die before it happens?
Hold
Or
on,
what?
let him address it.
Okay, sorry.
the landfill, I think if I remember correctly, is under the current configuration expected to be active for 68 years. I'm sorry, I was misremembering that. 68 years, and then on top of that, there's what's called a post-closure care period, and that's for 30 years.
Okay, so by the time I'm 80, I'm going to have to...
Well, I don't know how old you are, but that's 98 years, so I think it's more than when you're 80.
Okay, but I care about my children and my community. So what's going to happen to the community after that? You're not going to answer that question? Is he going to make me go sit down?
The modern liner systems we're talking about have only existed since the mid-'80s. So historically, counties and other municipalities...
Exactly.
Hold on.
Thank you.
Please, let's have one person speaking.
Please base your comments on factual information, not speculation, not opinions.
It is factual.
All right, thank you.
It is factual.
Okay, continue.
If you let me finish.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, great. So if you look back, before there were the modern liner systems that are currently required, and it's called Subtitle D, in case you want to look it up. Subtitle D requirements came into existence in the mid-'80s.
He doesn't even know. Oh, okay.
88 to 90. Prior to that, most municipalities or county governments operated landfills without liner systems, with no protection. Okay, and I believe Waller County did, and you can check that too. But there are some closed landfills that have not created the problems without liners that you're concerned with.
I'm sorry, but that did not answer my question. My question was, what are you going to do after we're all dead and gone? This landfill will still be here, affecting this community. So what are you going to do to make sure that our children and our children's children and the prosperity, strictly from my HBCU, what are you going to do to ensure that the quality of this area is as perfect as it is now in the future?
I've tried to answer your question with, I think, a factual information. I encourage you to look for it and see if your premise, which is that there will be contamination at some point, is correct.
It is, because you've already said it.
So at this point, again, you've asked a handful of questions. I wonder if we could move on to, because we've got less than 15 minutes left in the informal discussion period. Yes.
Hi, my name is Arnulfo Miramontes. I just moved in Hempstead, Texas. Me and my wife, we're building a house ourselves. And the reason we move over here is because we like to spend the rest of our lives in a nice house. We're trying to do a pool, and we're trying to make a nice porch so we can sit outside in a rocking chair and be nice. But I've been looking on the internet about the landfill problems for the people who live nearby, and it just amazed me and horrified me, all the details the resident says about the landfill, which is the smell, which is the #1 problem. We're so close to the landfill site that you want to build. I'm really, really worried about the smell, the flies, the birds, and I mean, how did you think about us when you were building the landfill so close to us, or you just didn't care?
Okay, so the question is, with what regard did you take for the community when deciding where to locate the landfill?
I think you've raised some very important questions that every community is going to be concerned about when they hear about a facility like this being constructed. Property values, odor, impact on traffic, impact on groundwater, impact on surface water. Those are legitimate concerns, and there is a history in this country of landfills that have had horrible impacts on their communities. I'm not going to deny that. That's a real world situation. The rules that were put in place over the last several years have been put there for the purpose of eliminating those types of impacts. And so we have to demonstrate to the TCEQ in order to get a permit that there will be controls on odor, there will be controls on vectors and rodents. And
my question was, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
My question was, when you were trying to build the landfill, did you thought about us or not?
Did we call you?
No, did you think about the...
Yes,
All right,
we
thank
did.
you.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
we did.
Well, how far? We're not even 3 miles from the landfill, and when you look on the internet for information on landfill, everybody's got a problem with it. Everybody says, okay, the smell this, it comes into our houses through the night and it stays forever. We cannot make a party for our kids and invite other people because we're ashamed of the smell. And the company says, well, we're gonna start putting these air fresheners and chemicals and everything, but nothing works. So if you look on the internet, I'm sure you did already, there's many residents from different cities and states, they're actually suing landfill companies. I remember I look at one that they just give them $500 for the residents of that area. It's not really, I wish you can find a different place to put your landfill. Really it's gonna impact us horribly if you build it over there.
All right, thank you. I would invite you to make those statements during the comment period as well. Thank you. Do you have any other questions related to the application?
Actually, yes.
Okay.
For the entity are you doing everything in your power to protect us from the environment that this landfill is going to do to us?
Hold on.
Yes, sir. The review that we do is to protect human health and the environment. We have not gotten that portion of the application. They have filed for land use determination. It's part 1 and 2, and it's mostly the administrative content. And of course, the ordinance issue is being looked at. But in parts 3 and 4 of the application, they will get into the technical substance, the liner, the leachate collection system, all the controls that they have to have in place. And that's what we will be reviewing very closely.
And you're actually going to really help us with this matter? Are you going to be protecting us, the people from the state of Texas?
Yes, sir. And that's part of the reason why we have so many notices of deficiencies when we look at these applications. We want to ensure that it is protective as possible for human health.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Rick Welch. I'd like to thank Mr. Pintail, Mr. Lott, Mr. Gooden, and Mr. Arthur for coming down and being here and listening to our concerns this evening. I'd also very much like to thank Senator Cole, of course, for making her appearance and making such an important statement. It means a lot to this community in this area of Waller County. I have a question for Mr. Green. Is Ernest Kaufman here tonight?
No, he's not.
I see that you're listed as president now of Green Group Holdings.
That's correct.
Is Mr. Kaufman still with Green Group Holdings?
He is still an employee. He is transitioning into retirement effective at the end of this year.
Okay. And so what current responsibilities does he hold with him?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
What current responsibilities does he hold with Green Group at this point?
He doesn't hold any responsibilities.
Okay. Was he asked to step down and be replaced?
It was part of a known transition as he moved into retirement.
Okay. What about Oscar Allen? Is Oscar Allen still with Green Group Holdings?
No.
Okay. When did he leave?
Oscar left, I believe, in the spring of last year.
Last year or this year?
I'm sorry, this year.
This year?
This year,
Okay.
yes, sorry.
Was he asked to resign?
What happened with Oscar is that the projects that he was responsible for and working on were completed, so his role was no longer necessary for the company.
Okay. What about Mac Reynolds Jr.? Is he still with Green Group Holdings?
No, Mac is now a project manager with a company in Georgia. He moved back home.
Stevens Industries?
I don't know the exact name of it, but the owner or the principal's last name is Stevens.
Okay, is there any affiliation between that company and Green Group?
Not that I'm aware of.
Even indirectly?
Excuse me?
Even indirectly?
Well, I mean, yes, indirectly. Mac used to work for us and now he works for them, so there's an indirect relationship.
Okay, so at this point you've asked a handful of questions and...
Okay, I've got a couple of questions I'd like to ask at the TCEQ
Okay,
as well.
please proceed.
I do have one other question. Is Art Van Meter still with Green Group Holdings?
Art is the CFO of Herzog, which is one of the two investors that own part of Green Group, and he served in an officer and director role a few years ago. And Art, I believe, has also retired. He's in his mid to late 60s.
Okay, so it just seems like a whole lot of people for Green Group left all of a sudden, and I was just kind of curious as to that. I've got other questions for y'all, but in the interest of time, I've got questions for the TCEQ as well. Number one, I was planning on asking about the ordinances, but to be quite honest with you, I truly believe that y'all do know that local, municipal, and county ordinances are by presumption valid under law, and that the correct venue for challenging the validity of local ordinances is in the court system. And so I truly do believe that you will make the right decision in returning this application. I'd like to thank you for that. I've got some other questions as well. In the public notice, and I've got a copy of the public notice here, it says that this application is available for viewing and copying at the Waller County Library. Now, is it a requirement by statute or rule that a copy of the application be available in a public location?
One of you go ahead and pick up the microphone.
That is correct. It's a rule requirement.
It's a rule requirement, and is it also a requirement that that it be at that location continuously during the entire permitting process?
That is correct.
That's correct?
Correct.
Okay, and is it also in that rule that that application or portions of the application must be available to be able to make copies of them?
That is correct. My understanding of the rule.
Okay, is it also a regulation or a rule that all of the documents contained within the application be legible or readable?
It should be. I don't know that we go into that level of specificity, but that would be the purpose of having the application on file in a publicly accessible place. So anyone who's interested in looking up those things could do that without too much trouble.
Okay.
Okay, now you've asked like two handfuls of questions. Do you have maybe one more so we can move on to some other folks?
This is still along the same line of questioning, to be quite honest with you. And if my question is, if the location that is chosen for the location of this application does not have available to it the ability to make photocopies in either 11 by 17 or 24 by 36, or even in color, then does that meet the requirements?
Well, I don't think the rule goes to that level of specificity, but what I would say is that if someone wants portions of the application and they're unable to get them from the library, then they can certainly contact staff and we can arrange for those copies to be made for you and provided to you.
Well, certainly the diagram that they have over here on display, which is a map purportedly showing the locations of where the City of Hempstead ordinance is valid, or invalid, is only produced in that format on an 8.5 by 11 sheet in the application that's posted at the library. And at that level, it's absolutely unreadable as far as the legend goes and so forth. And so I'm wondering if the TCEQ has a better quality version of that and where I might be able to find one. Because it's kind of hard for the public to be able to decipher what they're saying. And Mr. Riley said it himself, maybe it was Mr. Green, that that's their belief on what the coverage of the City of Hempstead ordinance is. And it's hard for the public to go by that map if it's not legible.
We also provide access to the application through the TCEQ website.
Right, that's
We provide
correct.
a link to the applicant's.
And that's unreadable on that, which is why I went to the library to try and find a legible copy of that, and it's not legible in the library.
And I would say that if you feel like the application materials that have been made available to you are insufficient, that would be something that you would want to make on the record as a comment. So it's something that TCEQ staff would have to consider when making any decisions on the application.
Okay, well, I'd like TCEQ to consider that because I believe that's an important issue if the public can't read the application or portions of the application. And thank you again. I do believe you'll make the right decision in returning this application based on the ordinances. And thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I do have that it's 8:30 now. As I stated earlier, I do want to make sure that we leave time for folks who wish to provide comments, that they have the opportunity to do so. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 folks still standing in line. If we could please move quickly through the questions that you have so we can get to the formal comment period. Yes.
Good evening. My name is Brandon Davis. I am the former Director of Environmental Sustainability at Prairie View A&M University for Student Government Association, and I'm proud alumni, and now a resident of Hempstead, Texas. Now, I spent my whole undergrad career fighting this landfill, sitting here researching every single move of this landfill. 6 years later, we're still here. So my first set of questions I want to direct towards the TCEQ. How dare you? All of these notice of deficiencies, y'all wrote their applications. Don't you see that? How is this happening? Who makes the call of the justification to say, okay, they messed up, let's do it again? Okay, they messed up, let's do it again. When does it stop?
Okay, thank you. Let's go ahead and address that question. Thank you.
So, I think Mr. Tetu said earlier that we're an administrative agency, and the application review, there's over 800 rule citations that we look at when reviewing one of these applications. There are going to be things that could be missed during the application review process that someone from the outside may point out to us, and we will ask those questions when we're in the application review phase. We will ask questions that come up at the public comment period. That's what this interaction is for us to gather information and ask questions of the applicant. However, we have no statutory rules that say we can limit the number of notice of deficiencies that we send out on an application.
So if they mess up for 6 years, we can continue to keep going on and keep pushing it, right? That's no statutations on that, right?
No,
so it can go 10, 15 years.
We would have been poisoned.
No, there's no, they don't go on for that length of time, but there is no limit to the number of times that they can file for an application.
Okay, another question. Do you do background checks?
No, there's no background check requirement.
So the only other landfill that Green Group Holdings operate is Arrowhead, which is in Alabama right now, which our citizens are seeing the spike of asthma. They're seeing how this landfill went from a municipal type 1 landfill to carrying coal ash. And these citizens fought just like we're fighting. But they're different from us. We're real resilient, if you can, tell. We're going to continue to stand here and fight, spend money, and do whatever we got to do.
Again, so the question...
I got you.
Okay.
I got you. Good. So the question is, if the other landfill that they operated contaminated the environment, and you are, as you quoted earlier, a champion for human health, you're an advocate, that's what your agency does. And the only other thing that they operate, destroy health. And I'm going to get to you in 1 second. But how are you allowing this application for the second one to continue to move forward?
Okay.
We can't look at factors in another state. That's not allowed. If we look at what they're proposing, their application says they're proposing to dispose of municipal solid waste, including class 1 waste, which has asbestos-containing material. That's the extent of the waste that this application is proposing at this point.
Okay, I hope the next job I apply for is as generous as you. Next person. Green Group. How dare you?
And again, as a reminder, we should keep this at the conversational level, please.
This is. It is.
Okay.
I'm not calling no names.
Okay.
I'm making a statement,
Okay.
sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, how dare you? Again, you sat up there, you destroyed Uniontown, Alabama. When I was in the Student Government Association, I had the pleasure to continue to keep our communications with Black Belt Organization, the one that y'all suing for $30 million for standing up for all of those hospital visits that people are doing, all of those raising cases of health concern that people are going on, the one y'all counted to for $30 million. Is that your plan this time? Just in case if it made a mistake, made a leak or anything? Is that's the next step?
All right. Thank you. I'm sorry, what?
Mr. President, Mr. Green, right? That's your name?
If you don't mind, just restate your question.
My question is, what is the contingency plan? What is the contingency plan if this landfill leaks?
When it leaks.
We got to be okay for him.
All right, so let's go ahead and let them address the question. Is there a contingency plan for if the liner leaks?
There's a very well prescribed process in the Texas statutes that require what happens if there is a leak, which we do not anticipate to happen. But if it did, there's a notification requirement, there's a contamination assessment that's required, a contamination assessment plan that has to be approved, and then the remedial action is taken, and financial assurances have to be put in place to make sure it's paid for, and then monitored after the fact to make sure that the remedial action worked.
Okay, and I'm going to be out of your hair for the second time. Last and foremost, well, it's two real quick ones. One is, how do you put a dollar amount on contaminating an entire community? What is the dollar amount? And the other one, so you can answer them together so I can walk off, is, so many.
What about? There is no dollar amount that I can give you without knowing the specific facts. That's too hypothetical to even answer.
Okay, so is this your, I guess, makeup plan since y'all messed up Alabama, since y'all destroyed that community? Is this your chance to redeem yourself? Because the only one y'all operate, y'all destroy a community.
Okay, let me answer two sides of that. Yes. First of all, we operate the landfill for the island of Guam. We operate a landfill in New Mexico. We operate a landfill in Wyoming.
Hold on, let them finish.
You made the point that's the only other one we operate, and that's an inaccurate statement. So I just want to make sure that we get the facts out here. As it relates to Uniontown, I also strongly disagree with the premise that you've come up with, that we've destroyed that community. Go back and look at the environmental record. There hasn't been one notice of violation that has ever been given for that site.
They're scared. You sued the last people $30 million.
Okay.
Who has $30 million? Not us.
All right. Let's move on to the next folks. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Will Dietering. I own the Endo Plantation, which is the only national landmark in Moore County. It's less than 2 miles from the landfill. I appreciate all y'all sitting up there because obviously tempers are boiling. It is insanity that we're standing here today because we should be over with. I have two questions.
All right, thank you.
I have two questions. One is, what's the difference between a landfill and a dump? Is there a difference?
I think there's one, yes.
Could you tell me the difference?
Dump is a vernacular term that's used in a derogatory way to talk about a place where waste is disposed. A landfill, to me, is a more descriptive term that is used to describe modern landfills.
Okay. Something about pigs and lipstick.
So your second question?
My second question is, since it's about your application, what, unless it's two exhaustive. What is different about the second application over the first application that was denied?
All right, thank you.
I think the number one thing that's different is that we intend to design the facility acknowledging that the bottom liner system will be in contact with the groundwater on the site. So that requires significant changes in the way that the site is constructed, how you dewater the groundwater, and the ballast that's subsequently used so that you don't have hydrostatic uplift. So that's going to be the big technical issue that the state's going to face and that we have to prove when we come in with the new application. That's the number one thing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Gentlemen, I'm Jean White Alexander. I would appreciate knowing how it is that the first application had many deficiencies. And I thought there was an agreement between both parties that this land certainly did not fit to have a landfill on it. Now, how could there be another question of your decision that you made before? What changed? Just another application, but if the land had already been rejected as appropriate for a landfill, then why would you even consider another application on the very same land?
Okay.
Okay. We returned the application at a pretty late stage in the process because the applicant admittedly informed us that they no longer met the requirements of our rules because of groundwater concerns.
Right.
And we felt that the application should be returned since they are no longer meeting the technical requirements of the rule. However, we do not have the rule or authorities to deny them from coming in with another application.
So under the law, anyone can apply to conduct an activity, and the TCEQ is required to review that application. We can't just say, no, we're not going to look at that application.
Seems like you wouldn't,
Thank you.
You wouldn't negate your first decision. You would simply say the first decision applies, and so it's over.
Well, they have come in with the new application. We have not received the technical portion of the application, but I understand it's going to be a complete redesign and engineering of the landfill.
Are they going to go around and pick up all the trash and all the little toxic materials you drop from those trucks as they enter the land? How do you protect the land when that dirt is sand and everything that hits that ground seeps right on through?
What sort of requirements are there for the trucks that are coming in and off the property?
Well, there are requirements, as you might imagine, for litter pickup and other spills or other issues. So yes, there are requirements that would make us or make Pintail clean up any trash or spills that occur.
Thank you. Also, I know Texas likes to keep their independence. I understand that the EPA has said that all landfills will leak. The liner will leak. It doesn't matter where it is, it's going to leak eventually. So after you've been here X number of years and you leave, do you take all your garbage with you, or are you going to leave it there?
All right, thank you. So the question is, I guess what EPA's position is regarding liners and the fact that they leak.
EPA made that statement, and I know the document to which you're referring. EPA made that statement in a very broad context, meaning that over eons, landfills can...
Hold on.
That was the context for what they were saying.
And the higher you build it, the more weight there is on the liner. And simple materials, chemicals, can make that leak.
And I would invite you to come up during the comment period and make those as part of your comments. If you don't mind, I'd like to move on to some other folks that have questions. Thank you.
Mr. Green, my name is Tom Brown, and I'd like to ask you several questions about your own personal things. Mr. Kaufman had to take bankruptcy numerous times in various states. How many times have you taken bankruptcy, either business or personal?
I don't know that that's necessarily related to the application, but if you want, hold on. But if you want to address it, I'll give you the opportunity.
I've never filed for bankruptcy in any form.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
The next question I have, the 700 and some plus acres has two different streams that cross it from north to south. Will, in any of your activities, will you be required to cross either one or both of those streams?
Not that I'm aware of. The landfill footprint, the landfill permit boundary are all on the other side of both those streams to my recollection.
But I believe you're planning on moving dirt around, and perhaps you're going to get dirt from the other side of those streams. Is that possible?
That may be possible.
I thought so. Okay. That streams, I talked with, incidentally, I failed to mention, we've acknowledged that Senator Colkhorst is here, Representative Bell. The former mayor of Prairie View, Frank Jackson, is also here. He's a good guy. Where I was going with my questions about the dirt, you're going to have to move dirt to cover the garbage. The source of the dirt you're going to move is on the other side of the two streams. It came to my information today that those streams are considered to be navigable waterways. I agree it's ridiculous, but nevertheless, they're navigable waterways, and they have jurisdiction of the U.S. Corps of Engineers. Have you looked into that at all, gentlemen? And would that maybe make you want to move somewhere else? Or at least give it some thought.
Okay,
and my last question, go
ahead, let's let him answer that one.
Well, I guess I'll answer it this way for now, and then when we file parts 3 and 4, maybe we can get into more detail about it. But at a minimum, we have to submit a wetlands jurisdictional determination as part of our application, and that is included in parts 1 and 2 that was submitted. So first of all, you have to delineate where the wetlands are. And then once you do that, if there's impact, depending on the nature of the wetland, there are certain actions that you have to take to make sure you don't affect the integrity of the wetlands or the quality of the water.
All right. My last question then would be to you, gentlemen. The last time you all were here, some of you were here, but the lady that was running the show, I thought did a great job, but their predecessors treated her rather badly. In addition to that, this question goes to your common sense and their lack of honesty and integrity. In the last application, they were caught lying, cheating, hiding evidence, doing all manner of things that I consider to be evil, and I don't know why you guys don't grow a backbone and kick them out of your office.
Okay, so, thank you. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. My name is Tom Altman, and I'm a local trash company, and I'd like to know why did you guys select the site here of Highway 6 and 290 if it's strictly not for economics? And because there's a waste management company behind you guys, because if you got a landfill, you can have it anywhere that you wanted to and charge the dumps out there. You're not going to make any more money by having a dump here than you would out in the woods or wherever we want to put one. But there's a company behind you. I don't think that's really come out to the public yet where the money is coming from. And once that you get a dump in here, then they will take over the business out here. I don't like that. That's going to hurt my business. I have to dump now in either Katy or in Houston. But when whoever it is behind you that's going to control the dump out here, they can set the rate whatever they want to for me, and whoever has that business out here, they'll get a different rate, and it's going to be unfair. But why didn't you select someplace other than the economics of the trucking business right here, Highway 290 and 6? It's right here. Why didn't you select somewhere else in the county? Get it out of here. Don't bother all of us people. I live a half a mile from where this dump's. I live a half a mile from where this dump's going to be. And I've been in this trash business now right at 10 years. A small company, got 100 and something boxes scattered out. But I don't like it. I carry mine in and I fight in every one of the rallies and everything we have. I donate dumpsters. I've donated quite a few dollars opposing this, even though I'm in the business and you put it next door to me. Why didn't you go somewhere else if you're just the owner of the dump?
Okay, so let's go ahead and address that.
Okay, I'm going to answer two parts to it. The first relates to whether there's another company behind us or something to that effect. We are owned by two investors. It's on our website. It's very, very transparent. And we have been 100% funded by those two entities. We have no agreement to sell this company to anyone in the solid waste industry, nor have we received any funds from them to assist us in this permitting effort so far. So I want to make that statement to you first. Secondly, as someone who's been in the industry, you know you go through a series of siting criteria in order to place a filter over whether a piece of property is appropriate for land use or not. And there were a number of sites that were considered in this county, and this was the one that was selected 5 or 6 years ago, and that's for those reasons.
It's not because of the location of being Highway 290 and 6 and how much cheaper it will be for whoever your major company that's coming out here can dump here rather than carry the load back to Katy or back to Houston. I mean, if you put one here and charge me the same thing, I can dump here $75 to $100 cheaper than I can carry the load back to Houston and dump it there. So try to tell me, hey, y'all are just the dump people? No, I can't buy all that. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you. And that gentleman was the last person that I had indicated we would take questions from. At this time, let's take a break. We'll take about a 10-minute break and come back at 9 o'clock and start the formal comment period. Thank you.